Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, a child of the 80s. And one of my favorite movies was the Cannonball Run, about a race across the country. It featured an all-star cast, including Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Farrah Fawcett, Dean Martin, Jackie Chan, so many more. According to Wikipedia, a Cannonball Run is an unsanctioned speed record for driving across the United States from New York to Los Angeles. Apparently, the current record is 25 hours and 39 minutes with an average speed of 110 miles an hour.
Wow.
Today's guest, Mike Gandolfo, made his own Cannonball Run earlier this year with his son riding shotgun. Mike wears many hats. He's the owner of RE Solutions, a multi-office real estate brokerage in Louisville, Kentucky. He's a former championship basketball coach and still carries that coach's heart with him today. He's an avid horse racing fan. He serves on the board of directors for the Kentucky Derby Festival, and he's co-host of the Horse Racing Happy Hour podcast. He is a certified 12-week-year trainer. And along with one of our previous guests, Michael Lennington, he hosts the Aligned Life Pro podcast. Mike may not have broken the Cannonball Run record, but he had an amazing time in the process, and he's here to share his story with us. Mike, my good friend, welcome to the campfire.
Man, I'm so excited to be here. I remember when you and I were talking just about when this podcast was an idea in your head, and to see it come to fruition. But then I've been sharing it with so many people, and I was actually having coffee with a guy this morning. Who just is like eating up all your episodes and just loving the podcast. And he's like, get me on this show. He's like, I grew up in the woods and I've been to Alaska 3 times. Like, I want to be on the show. So
nice.
You guys,
that's amazing. We want to talk to him. And definitely credit goes to Mike Gandolfo for helping me get this set up. You're kind of my inspiration and a mentor along the way. And I'm ever grateful for that, Mike. We're going to get into some of that because you have a coach's heart and you are a connector at your very core. But I want to ask, so do you remember the movie Cannonball Run with all of those all-star actors?
So I'm going to say yes and no.
Okay.
I definitely do remember the movie. I probably have not seen it in a long time, but I have seen it before. But it's probably been 30 something years. But yes, I do remember the Cannonball Run.
Oh man, it was one of my favorites as a kid. Just all these harebrained cars and activities. And
are we the same age? Or are you a little bit?
Ride.
Are you a little bit?
I think we're about the same age. I probably just watched more TV than you did.
I was born in 1976.
Yeah, 75. So
okay, so we're right there.
Yeah. So I had a little bit of fun kind of thinking about when you told me about this trip that you took, and I just immediately thought of Cannonball Run. So let's just get it right out there, right? The record is 25 hours, 39 minutes. How long did it take you to do this trip?
Yeah. So we started in Louisville, Kentucky, and we plotted out a southern route, and then we kind of went up the coast of California a little bit, and then a northern route home. So we did this big circle, and it was my son and I, and we did it over the course of 9 days. Generally driving, if I had to guess, I think the longest drive day was probably 11 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say we were normally right around the 8.5 hours of driving a day, so we could actually enjoy some of the places that we went to. So
right. Yeah. And so so in 9 days, how many miles did you cover?
It's like 5,600.
5,600 miles over.
Yeah, I used to know exactly what it was, but it was in that ballpark. So
yeah. So maybe not a true Cannonball Run, like it wasn't a race across the country, but
absolutely not.
What I love about this is that you had a limited amount of time, but like you wanted to pack in as much as you could in a short period of time. And I think like what's so cool about that in terms of this podcast is we work within our limits, and you guys 5,600, who goes 5,600 miles in 9 days? Well, Mike Gandolfo and his son Rocco do. Tell us about this trip. Can you give us some highlights and what you did and where you went?
Yeah. Well, first, I think it's important to know the origins, because I think, this is not something that we just had this massive planning session and we've been working for it forever. This is, I know some of your other guests have talked about, this is a product out of, we're a year into COVID. My son is getting ready to go absolutely crazy, just not being in school in person. The mental, if you have teenagers right now, as I know you do too, the mental health impact of COVID to our kids has been just really, really severe. And you've done stuff as a parent too that I know that kind of combat that and taking them on some trips and whatever else. But my son was just needed to get out of the house, needed to go on an adventure. And we were watching a documentary about the giant sequoia trees. And he's like, I want to go see the giant sequoia trees. And I was like, all right, let's go. The flexibility of what you and I do and having the people around us, I can say in February, spring break's coming up, let's go. And that's what we did. We probably had, I don't know, 6 weeks of training or 6 weeks of planning, maybe even less than that. And we're like, okay, I started plotting out a route and started looking at some of the cities we could hit along the way and where we could stop. And we mapped it out. And so we left Louisville. The very first stop we made was, and this was not this was just kind of stopping for lunch and just kind of seeing the stuff. We stayed overnight, but the first stop we made was in Memphis, Tennessee. We went and visited where Martin Luther King was assassinated. And that was, and so the first day was an ambitious 12-hour day, was one of the longer runs. And so that was about halfway for us to get to Oklahoma City. And honestly, we got to Oklahoma City pretty exhausted. And we wake up the next morning, and because I figured out that the key to this road trip was getting up early and knocking out as much of the drive before lunch as possible, enjoying the places we were to visit, kind of after lunch. And then we went to bed fairly early. And so we got up and we drove to the Oklahoma City bombing site. And I was not prepared for how powerful it might be my favorite monument in the United States.
Wow.
And especially going when it's not daylight outside, because when it's lit up, it's absolutely beautiful. And we're on the path to go see these giant sequoia trees, but we're impacted right off the bat by something on the bombing site that's called the survivor tree. And the survivor tree in Oklahoma City, it was basically the only shade tree that was right behind the bombing site. Right there, right behind the bombing site. And so people would eat lunch under it, whatever. But it was traditionally it was known as the ugly tree. It was just this ugly elm tree that, it served its purpose for providing shade. And then when the bombing happened, it really severely damaged this tree. But somehow the tree fought through and survived. And now it's grown into this just absolutely gorgeous elm tree. It's been completely transformed by this, the negative event of the Oklahoma City bombing. And so we went from Oklahoma City.
Hold on, you got to stop there, because that's let's, I think everybody can infer what that metaphor is, but you said that was one of the most impactful things that happened on that trip. So can we just go deep for a minute there on that? What did that mean to you?
I vividly remember when the Oklahoma City bombing happened. I remember where I learned about it. I just started dating my wife, and we were on the back porch of her mother's house, and her mother was in tears, and she told us about what happened. And but you can just really get there and feel that this event, and if you kind of even look at what's gone on in Oklahoma City since then, the growth that has happened in that city. It's now a professional sports town. It's all this stuff has happened, but this one event, which could have been which was incredibly tragic, it's one of those crossroads on life where things could have gone, totally in the toilet, or you could, pick yourself up and say, we're gonna come back from this and become better. And Oklahoma City has definitely done that. And then when you get there, but they've memorialized every single person who died in that event. And to be honest, I was not also prepared for how many little kids died in the Oklahoma City bombing, because the bombing actually happened on the other side of what was the daycare. I mean, the daycare was the first place that felt the impact of the bombing. Then you hear about this survivor tree and the lessons with the survivor tree of just like, even though you're going through tough times, you might actually feel like you're cut down to the absolute nub. You can grow back, and you can grow back beautiful and stronger than before. And if your roots are good enough, you can overcome all that stuff. And then finally, on the other side of the bombing site, because this was a huge explosion, there is actually a Catholic church. Their Catholic cathedral is just on the other side of the bombing site. And my son and I are Catholic, and our faith is important to us. And the Catholic church was damaged, where everything was blown out the walls. The glass windows were blown out, except for the crucifix.
Wow.
And, it was a message of having the roots, and really knowing that you can overcome whatever comes your way, how important your faith could be. And just, and again, but the light that you see when you go here at night, because everything's lit up and illuminated, that the light that can come out of negative events, that, I think if you went and asked, if you surveyed a bunch of people and you said, hey, what's the best thing that's ever happened to you? What's the worst thing that ever happened to you? There's a large portion of that group that would say it's the exact same event, that the best thing that ever happened to you and the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the exact same event.
Yeah.
And because of what has come out of such a tragic event.
Mike, I mean, we're 12 minutes in, and I think we're already done. Like,
are we 12 minutes? I'm sorry. I'm so
going to get more. We can't get any more impactful than that. Like, so here's the thing. You guys started on this trip, and I mean, you went right in, because you went to Memphis and you went to the place where MLK was assassinated. Then you go to Oklahoma City and you're checking out the bombing site, and you tell us this beautiful story of the survival tree. And I mean, in both of these, the message is that we have to go through suffering to get through the hard times and then come out the other side. And man, that's what this whole podcast is about. It's about, like, why people put themselves into these situations, to find growth. One of my guests at one point said that sometimes we go and we do these things. He had done this epic bike ride from Canada to Mexico, and he boiled the whole thing down to suffering. And I asked him about the suffering, and he said, like, life's gotten too easy, and sometimes we have to create these artificial challenges in order to create that suffering, to give ourselves something to work through. You've already gone there, and this is more on not on an individual level, but on a collective level with Oklahoma City and with the MLK assassination. This is amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And it was amazing. I mean, it was, and so I guess I also should back up and say we had a couple rules of our road trip that I think also helped really define what this road trip ended up being. It wasn't necessarily what the purpose was at the beginning, but I think looking back at it, I hope it is what really comes out of this road trip. The two rules that we had were we could not eat at a restaurant that we could eat at in Louisville, Kentucky.
Love that.
Okay. That was number one. The second rule is no headphones in the car. If I was going to have this windshield time with my son, we were going to have the windshield time. Mm-hmm. And so part of the rituals that kind of came out of this was, when we're driving into Oklahoma, we're learning about, we're listening to a podcast about the Native Americans fight for their land in Oklahoma, and how all these Indian nations kind of popped up and claimed territories and what that meant for them. And that's actually fairly recent. And then we talked, leaving Oklahoma City, we did some podcasts about the Oklahoma City bombing, and we always just kind of tried to listen and learn about the places we were going, and then have really good, impactful conversations in between. This was really going back to it. It was kind of helping my son at his pivotal age of where he was, of getting ready to go to high school, on his journey to help him become a man. And that's really what it kind of all, came back to. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got at least another 4,000 miles to go, probably more like 5. So let's keep going.
I would say the next stretch is probably not as eventful. Like we went from Oklahoma City to Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a stop at Amarillo, the Cadillac Ranch in Amarillo. Where all the Cadillacs are standing upside or upright with, they're all spray
nice.
painted and stuff like that. And going through New Mexico is very humbling because there's a lot of just vacant. It looked like the Cars movie. Like we literally stopped for lunch in New Mexico, and it looked like you had the old Texaco station, and everything else around it was abandoned. And I was like, oh, we're like literally in the setting, and we were on Route 66. And
Nice.
but then we stayed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ended up going to a very cool Catholic church. This was a Saturday night, so we went to mass. And this Catholic church was built before America was even a country. It was built like in 1740 or something like that. I wish I couldn't remember exactly what the date was. And but just to kind of go to one of those more historic Catholic churches in the United States. And then we got up early, and we were going to the Grand Canyon. That was the next day. So we made the trip to the Grand Canyon, which Scott, have you been to before? I'm assuming you have. Okay.
Yep.
It's one of those things
to the rim. I have a goal to go down in, but I've
right.
the rim.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I learned about the Grand Canyon. Like you go and you could spend a lot of time there and walking around the rim and whatever else, but at the end of the day, you're looking at a really big hole, and just trying to even understand the depths of the Grand Canyon. Because I think that the first thing was you look down into it and you're like, is that the bottom? And then your eyes adjust and you can go a little bit deeper. And I kept on trying to find the river. I don't know if that's what you did or not, but it's not easy to find, right? And then you would find little places where the river come through, and you could kind of see how your eyes kind of play tricks on you with depth and whatever else. And but the Grand Canyon for me was like, it's one of those places where you go and you look down into a hole for a couple hours and walk around and get a couple different vantage points, or you got to like spend like a week there and really get in there and explore it. And I know my group of guys that have talked about, hey, maybe we'll try to get one of those whitewater or one of those rafting permits and try to raft it. Doing something like that, I think that would be a lot of fun.
When you do, I might just happen to show up.
That's all right. We got a guide who wants to take us on there and everything. So
nice.
After that, we stayed in Kingman, Arizona. We crossed into Nevada, and then eventually into California, right into Death Valley. We stopped for gas in Death Valley. I was telling you this earlier. We stopped and paid $4.50 for gas, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is unbelievably high for gas." And of course, I would love to pay $4.50 for gas right now.
That's right. And that wasn't that long ago. That was only a few months ago.
It was the spring of 2021. This is March, late March 2021.
Yeah.
And then we passed the world's largest thermometer. And this is where I think it's kind of cool, because this is probably where it's the absolute hottest on our trip, and it's March and it's hitting close to 100 degrees. And the landscape of California changes, where we're starting to go through all the orange groves, and now we're starting to make this climb up the mountain. And now, and it's not long before we've got snow around us. Like so like in one day we go from Death Valley to the top of a mountain where there's snow everywhere and it's cold, and it's we're going to the sequoia trees. Like we're making the hike to do what we wanted to do, to go see these giant sequoia trees.
Yeah.
And when you're it's an amazing drive just to see the landscape shift. It's seeing these water reservoirs or lakes that California have, and how depleted their water was really eye-opening for us. Realizing that they didn't get the snow melt they usually get. And then getting to where you all of a sudden at the top of this mountain, you're starting to drive along these just ginormous trees. And these trees, it's even hard to put into words. I showed Scott a picture that we'll post in the show notes of a picture of me of a selfie with a baby sequoia in the background. And if you look really close over my shoulder, you can see a green t-shirt at the base of this tree. And that's my not small. I mean, he's not a little guy. He's, he's probably a little bit bigger than you, Scott, right? So you'll see him at the base of this baby sequoia tree, and it's like he's a speck around where this huge just trunk of a tree is. And And then we
those,
got up to,
those trees are old. I mean, how old?
they're, a couple of them are a couple thousand years old. And I know we've got what's going on at Yosemite right now, and with some of them getting damaged. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to want to hold on to those old things.
Mm-hmm.
But the beautiful thing about what's happening at Yosemite right now is that we learned so much about the lessons of these sequoia trees, is that the only way that a new crop of sequoia trees is going to be planted and flourish is if they go through the fire. As they have, all these trees have these fire scars on them when you get up in Sequoia National Park. And what it is that the seed pods, the pine cones, they don't pop and become fertile unless they have the fire, unless they have the test. It's almost like a popcorn effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you understand that they need the fire to grow and survive and to flourish and to produce new life was really awesome. The other thing that we learned about was that there was a tree in Yosemite, and Yosemite's a little bit further north, maybe northeast of where Sequoia is. And where is that there was a giant sequoia tree that just all, seemed like it was healthy, but it fell in Yosemite. And what they determined was how important community is for these trees. This tree had no other sequoia trees around it. By its nature, their roots do not go deep because they're on a mountain. They go wide, they go out, and they grab onto each other and help hold each other up. And that's, so if a sequoia tree has got to have this community of people, of other trees around it to keep it standing so that it can grow taller and reach towards the sky at, taller than any other living object that we have in the world. And, so those lessons that we got from the sequoia trees were incredible. We did when you go to Sequoia National Park, you actually get Sequoia National Park and Kings Canyon National Park.
Mm-hmm.
The General Sherman tree, which is the largest living object by volume in the world, is in Sequoia. And then the one that's got the base that's got the greatest circumference is in Grant National Park. So sequoia trees are have larger trunks than redwoods. Redwoods grow taller, but sequoias by their nature are
I'm gonna go see some sequoias. I'm gonna get some pictures for you and
Yeah.
be thinking about you. But we got to take another time out because
Sure.
you just said we got to recap, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
we
gonna
can
go long on this, Scott. I'm sorry.
we're
gonna go long.
we're gonna learn some lessons from the trees.
Yeah.
I mean, we started this, MLK assassination site. We got the survivor tree in Oklahoma City. Now we're learning that even sequoia trees have to go through suffering and hardship in order to get stronger, in order to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, even trees need each other to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's how we are. I mean, that I have a group of guys that I depend on heavily, that, that we do the same thing. We hold on to each other and we help each other grow and reach towards our goals. And the community is so important. And I think that's one of the things during COVID, especially at the impressionable age that our kids are at, part of it is my son, I know that got very dependent and feels like he can do a lot of things on his own and doesn't need other people. And, or we have we have so many people just who feel like they're connected on social media devices, but not having the face-to-face interaction and how important that is to really help people grow and understand. I mean, you and I are both in real estate. I don't know if it's been the same for you all, but like it almost became impossible here to rent 2-bedroom apartments because no one wanted to have a roommate. If they were 1-bedroom apartments, we rent them all day long, and it's just like that nature. And my daughter's getting ready to go to college next year, and I'm so excited because she's actually staying in an old school dorm with a community bathroom.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, all these other kids are going to college and they've got these like suites and whatever else. I was like, you don't even understand what a gift that community bathroom is, because the first word in that bathroom is community.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're sharing a bathroom with an entire floor of girls, you're going to get to know those kids, those girls, at a deeper level than you'll ever even like think about, just because it forces the interaction. It forces you to run into them and know their name and talk to them. And when so-and-so's not there, you're going to notice and you'll check on them. And that, like, I know colleges want to try to become all this for all these, to appeal to so much. And they have these like mini hotel suites, but at the end of the day, like there's something to be said about the lessons that come out of living in
Yeah.
4 cinder block walls, basically a jail cell without bars, and then sharing a bathroom with a whole floor of people. That is extremely valuable part of college.
I love it. I love
So-
it. And the proof is in the fact that even the giant sequoia tree can't make it alone.
That's right.
Even the
That's
giant
exactly
sequoia
right.
tree needs help.
Absolutely.
All right. Keep us going. Where are we going next after the sequoia tree? So that was like the goal. Like
That was the goal. We got to Sequoia, we got to the Grand Canyon. We've had a good trip. We could turn around and come back, but we head up and go to the Bay Area, San Francisco area. We visit a friend of ours up there. So now we're on the way back. It's not as scenic coming back, although we did have some great experiences. But we went across the Golden Gate Bridge. We stayed that night in Sacramento. The next day was another long haul. We went from Sacramento to Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I've ever seen a place that is more just like where you feel disconnected from civilization than driving across northern Nevada, by the way. I did get a speeding ticket. Or no, I'm sorry. I got pulled over, but I actually, when I got pulled over in northern Nevada, the speed limit was 90 maybe, and I think I was going like 95, maybe 100.
Hey, listen, if you remember the movie,
yeah,
it wouldn't be a Cannonball Run without getting pulled over by the police.
Right. And I used it as like, hey, just watch. I want you to pay attention to how I handle this interaction with this police officer to my son. And, it was yes, sir, no, sir. I admitted what I did, kind of told him what we were doing and where we were trying to get to, and made a connection with the guy. And of course we got off with a warning. So,
so you did it the real way, like you did it the right way, like the non-Hollywood way. Because in the movie they used a lot of different kind of airplane tactics to get out of their speeding ticket.
I told my son, like, if you get pulled over, this is what you do.
Yeah.
You don't, you pull over right away. You don't make the guy drive that far down. You make sure you're yes or no, sir. You're pleasant. You're nice. You thank him for doing his job, and all that kind of appreciate people, and then just see what's going to happen. So
I love it.
We went through Reno, we did all that kind of stuff, and got to went across the great, the Great Salt Lake in its own is not, it's kind of gross, actually. If you've ever been there, it smells terrible. And, but going across the salt flats of Utah was really cool, especially if you're a Star Wars fan and you had the Star Wars scene with where, that they're having the battle with Kylo Ren on the Salt Planet. But met another friend, actually took advantage of our network, Scott, and my son is a very good judoka. He does judo at a high level, and he hasn't been able to exercise that much besides us getting out of the car and walking to these sites and walking a little bit around the Grand Canyon, Sequoia. So we got him connected through our community with someone where he could actually go do a judo class, and got to get out there and get some exercise. We went from there, and this is where probably my favorite part of the northern route was, driving from Salt Lake to Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
You're going through the Rocky Mountains. It was in some ways not an easy drive, and in some ways it was like just incredible drive. And then Utah is just so beautiful with all the different parks that they have, and so we made the stop there. We decided to make a little detour, and we stopped at Arches National Park, which is not a huge national park as far as national parks go. And we had another national park there that wasn't far away, but we just, from the interest of time, didn't go to Canyonlands.
But
Arches is just, it's gorgeous.
And did you get to see the delicate arch?
Oh yeah. And we walked, and we got some good needed exercise, drove through the Rockies, got to Denver, made the trip from Denver to Kansas City. We actually picked up the other 2 members of our family in Kansas City, and then drove back to Louisville. So the route never overlapped, which was, we took 65 south out of Louisville and made our way over to Memphis after we got through Nashville. And then we came home, on 64.
Yeah.
So never overlapped the route, which was pretty cool.
So, and what's cool about this, like people that know you that are listening to this, like this will come as no surprise. People that don't know you, you have a vast network of friends and colleagues around the country. You've helped me get plugged into that community. But when you were on this trip, you stopped and saw a lot of those people along the way.
Yeah, it was a balance. I think we stopped and saw. We actually stopped and saw 4 of the people. We stopped,
Mhm.
and that was all in the northern route. When
Mhm.
we stopped in the Bay Area, we stopped in Salt Lake City, we stopped
Mhm.
in Colorado, and we stopped in Kansas City. And at the end of the day, like I wanted to make the main thing the main thing. The main thing was making sure that I had this. I think when you have kids who are getting ready to go away to college, you realize that 18 years is what you really have to have like this day-to-day impact on their lives.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make sure that we kept that father-son time the main thing and not make it feel like he was going to dinner with my friends every night and that kind of stuff. But so we kind of pick and chose people he also had a relationship with and how we could kind of make this trip work for us.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. But also, it kind of just emphasizes this point about the giant sequoia trees,
having this community, yeah.
having that community, and you're a master at that. Like that's one of the
Thank
things
you.
that is a superpower of yours, is being involved in community and having connections all over the world.
And it
And
doesn't come naturally to me, by the way. I am naturally introverted.
well, you figured
And
it out. Let's maybe you've practiced.
I go back to the book, The Go-Giver,
Mm,
and the character in The Go-Giver that's actually kind of the person who's probably the most influential character in the story is the guy who's the connector. And I think living the laws of the Go-Giver is incredibly important, but then striving to be that connector is another thing that's really important.
yeah. It's a great book, by the way. I think you introduced me to that, and my whole team has read it, so I highly recommend it. So here's the thing: you just shared all of this stuff, all these
Yeah,
different places. Like, I have so many questions. Like, first of
sure.
all, when in the world did you sleep, and were you exhausted when you got home? I mean, you packed a lot into this trip.
You know, I wasn't that exhausted when we could have kept going. I think when it wasn't like we were ready to end it or whatever else. And we did map out our hotels. And I think the one thing is I stuck with one hotel brand to make sure that we were getting points at every, stop that we stayed
Yep.
at. So we stayed with one particular brand of hotel and just kind of, and that's basically what I did from a road trip perspective is when we left Louisville, we basically had every stop predetermined which hotel we were going to. And and definitely we made one adjustment to that on the route around the Grand Canyon. It was just kind of choosing how we wanted to make sure we made the most of that time. And then but beyond that, that was pretty easy. I mean, we would do our thing in the middle of the afternoon. We would have an early dinner. We were probably in bed by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. We'd wake up, get on the road around 4:30, and then do it all over again. So that was it.
5,600 miles, 9 days. Did you calculate how many hours you spent in the car?
No, I did not.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
like
it's a
again,
lot. It's a
it was a
lot.
lot.
I'm
Yeah,
curious what that. So
it
you
probably
talked
had to be
about wind.
close to 80, if I
Yeah,
had to
yeah, and you
guess.
talked about windshield time.
Yeah,
Can you talk about some of the conversations that you guys had and some of the stuff that happened while you were driving? I know you
yeah.
talked about podcasts and
Well, I mean, we talked about podcasts, and then what there was lessons from those podcasts. But again, he's going into high school. Like there's experiences that are going to become more prevalent as you get older and you get more freedom, you get your license, whatever else that you got to be prepared for. We talked about making choices with substances. We talked about making sure that he understood the morals of how we feel about sexual interactions with others and how you value other people and uh, all those kind of father son conversations that need to happen. um, we allowed them and even to the point of like how you need to approach your day and how do you need to understand, like I'm a big believer that the most important thing that people can get out of going to high school is not what you learn in history class, but can you take and understand the process by what you learn and how to go through that process. And um the school he ended up going to for high school is a private high school here in Louisville, Kentucky, and it goes back 5 generations in my family. And we talked a little bit about that and some historical perspective about what he was getting ready to do from that standpoint. And he's the first of that 5th generation to go to this school. And just really trying to, and the cool thing about when you're 81 or 80 hours of windshield time, like I didn't have to force any of those conversations. We could kind of guide our conversations to get us to that point. So nothing felt like, hey son, we're gonna sit down and have the talk, you know.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
you got him captive too, because you're stuck in the car, you're sitting right next to me, you are
And you
now
don't have
going to
headphones,
listen to me
no
preach.
earbuds, no AirPods. We're not doing any of that stuff,
But he
right?
was receptive.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, um, it was a very little drama. We never got tired of each other. Um, you're mixing these conversations with getting out of the car and seeing some cool things along the way. And of course, when you fly over something, it's one thing, but when you drive our country,
Mhm.
you get a whole, like, the one perspective that I got is like the majority of our country is not full of green grass. Like where you and I live, like it's lush, there's
Yep.
trees, green grass. It doesn't take long before I get in the pits of Arkansas and, all of a sudden, like there's a lot more brown around us than
Yep.
there's green,
Yeah.
and I
Rock
think
and sand and just
yeah,
dry. Yeah.
and we take that for granted, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So Mike, I want to talk about him and I want to talk about you.
Sure.
Would if I was talking to him, would he say that that trip changed him? And how do you feel like he would answer that?
That's a good question. I think if you asked him in 10 years, he probably would say yes, it changed him. I think there's still the teenage boy
Yeah.
probably would maybe not admit that just yet. So,
Did you see any changes?
oh yeah, yeah. Mainly from just building the trust level between the two of us,
Mhm.
and um, it's not the first adventure that him and I had gone on by ourselves, and we've been able to do some things since. So it's just knowing that the one thing about that I think was always difficult for him is that his I'm a former basketball coach, and his sister is a pretty good basketball player. She's going to play college basketball next year, and he never took to that at all. It was never his thing, and I think that he was in the back of his head was wondering if that was a disappointment to me, which it was not. It was one of those things, like, even early on, I think I was like, "Hey, if you don't want to play basketball, man, you don't have to play basketball. Like, let's go find out what you're good at.
Yeah.
Let's go untap your gifts and what you
Yeah.
want to do." And in being able to do these things with him that he enjoys, we drug him all over the country going to basketball tournaments. Now I got to drag him around the country for something that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And just making sure that that connection was there was super important. So,
I love it. So what about
yeah.
you? Did the trip change you?
The trip changed me from the standpoint, like, I honestly, like, I don't mind flying, but if it's within like 12 hours, I'll get in the car and I'll drive it.
And you didn't feel that way before this trip?
Um, I did to a degree, but I think it's that it probably broadened a little bit. I mean, Louisville, whenever you fly to Louisville, you're gonna have to connect anyway. So, like, there's not a whole lot of time savings there. And it's almost easier for me to kind of listen to a podcast or listen to an audible book in the car ride than it is for me on the plane.
Mhm.
And I think there's some sense of control, but then I have my vehicle there. I don't have to worry about Ubers and whatever else when I get to where I'm going. Like, I'm happy getting out and driving and seeing our country, and just I like doing that a lot. And now, I've literally driven from, and not in one trip, but I've driven my car to the Atlantic, driven my car to the Pacific, and none of that scares me at all. So
So, Mike, you and I are coached. We're mutually coached by the same organization, and they've done this sort of personality profile on us, and we
yeah,
both share this trait called free spirit,
correct.
right? And so, I'm curious how this trip fed your free spirit.
Yeah, the fact that it was February and I just said, "Hey, let's go." Like, that's the free spirit right there. The spontaneous. I
Yeah.
can make this decision. My business is still going to run. Just get up and go. And then again, we planned where our stops were, and we knew what we kind of wanted to go see, but we really didn't overplan the trip, so that we could let the trip kind of happen to us, and
Mhm.
unpack itself too.
Yeah.
So
So, dare I say, the trip fed your free spirit tank, gave you some energy.
absolutely, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think what I love about this trip is again, I know 5,600 miles in 9 days. A lot of people like wouldn't even think this is possible, but even just listening to this podcast and hearing all the stuff that you packed into a short amount of time, frankly, it's going to take away excuses, right? Because I think a lot of the people that have been on my podcast have taken a month off, 2 months off, 3 months off. You
Sure.
did this in 9 days.
Yeah.
And what's cool is like, a former coach, you're still a coach today.
Yeah.
You're not a basketball coach directly, but you are a coach.
Right.
And you've got this awesome podcast, the Align Life Pro, where you're helping entrepreneurs to improve their business. And you're a 12-week-year trainer. I'm just curious, like, how does all of this adventure stuff kind of fit into the bigger picture of, being the best that we can, whether it's as an entrepreneur or just being a better human?
Yeah. I mean, I think it all feeds itself. I mean, I think that's the bottom line is I've got to be able to have this business rocking and rolling and be able to operate whether I'm here or not. When I'm here, I want to be doing very high level things to move the business forward. Because like for me, the ultimate goal is to be able to live in Italy for 3 months, and
Nice.
so, and I can live in Italy in 3 months and still get some work done from where I am and all whatever else. And, but I understand that. And that's why I'm trying to I am a 12-week-year trainer, but I also want people to understand, I struggle with the 12-week-year stuff because that is long. I'm in that same profile. I am what they call specific, which means long-term planning for us is lunch, and which is also can be dangerous with the free spirit, right? And so, a 12-week plan is a long time for me. Where they're trying to create a sense of urgency, it's still something I get bored with, and how I try to. And so, I'm going through this process because the trick is how do I trick myself to being consistent, because the specific free spirit doesn't want to be consistent. They want to have new adventures every day. They want to have different things. But at the end of the day, I've got to lean into these core things on a consistent basis, because the only way to truly unlock the freedom that I desire is to embrace the systems and the structure that will get me there. And otherwise, I'll have freedom, but there's going to be a huge price to pay. And so the 12-week year is just a model to help me kind of get those structures and systems in place.
The structure gives you the freedom.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The structure that we resist so much, gives us and the consistency of that, just really is huge.
Yeah. So the other piece is, taking 9 days away from your business.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is that the focus was your son, that was priority number one.
Sure.
But I gotta imagine again, this stuff all kind of weaves together. When you got back from that trip, you had 9 days of just being completely out of the business. What does a break like that? What does a trip like that do for your business? And how did it make you better when you got back?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I also are very lucky that we have spouses that, do a lot of heavy lifting in the business for us. I would never be able to do any of this stuff if it wasn't for my lovely and beautiful and talented, hardworking wife.
She's great. I can attest to that.
And our two wives actually are on I don't know if it's every 2 weeks or whatever, but they do a little accountability call themselves, and
they are sequoia trees and they're connected.
That's right. They talk about dealing with their difficult husbands. And, but, I think that for me, it was understanding when I got back that there are, and this come anytime, I just got back from Italy, I can let go and my team can handle this basic level stuff. I can 80/20 my production as much as I want to, and really get to those key things that move the needle. And it's okay for me to let go and get help from these other people so that the business can grow like a sequoia tree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's really what you and I both have kind of got. We've got this group of people and agents and staff, and they're all their own sequoia trees that are trying to reach for the sky and reach for their limits. And we've got to tie into each other so that as a group, we're doing the same.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I also just listening to you talk, I mean, I feel, I sense that there's an awareness, sort of an opening, like you kind of like allowed your curiosity to lead you through some of this, and some of these these unexpected experiences kind of expanded, maybe the way you think or the way that you see things. And I've got to believe that like the survivor tree, right?
Mhm.
Things like that. And some of these metaphors that we're pulling out of the experiences that you bring back to the team, to your clients, to just the way that you conduct yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you. I mean, I think that there's, and I think it's also too just the way you and I do business. Like our clients love to hear about our adventures. Like they don't. It's not like we have like, man, you disappeared on me for whatever else. Like we get back, they want to hear the stories, they want to see the pictures, they want to, they want to live it vicariously through us, right? So we're blessed with a lot of great people.
Yeah, we sure are. And I'm just so grateful to know you and have been connected to you. I can credit Mike Gandolfo for so many of the guests that have been on this show. And Mike actually played a role in getting me to Mount Kilimanjaro earlier this year. So just through some of the connections that he made. And Mike, I'm forever grateful for that. So, again, I think you break through some barriers when you travel as far as you did in a short period of time. And I want to ask you, like, for people that are listening that maybe have like thought about different adventures or doing something like you did, but maybe feel some resistance or, experiencing those doubting thoughts as to why they can't. What advice do you have for people?
Well, I guess it depends if you're a free spirit or not. I mean, but at the end of the day, um, I it's rare that I hear someone say that they regret doing something adventurous, right? Like I wish I never would have done this or whatever else. And I guess if something tragic would have happened along the way, it would have been different. And there's always that small sliver of a chance. But at the end, most people, their regret says, man, I wish I would have done this. I had the opportunity to do this at this age, and now I can't go do this. And I could have gone to Yellowstone, and I didn't get a chance to go do it, and because that's an awesome trip too. And it's just when you get the opportunity to go do stuff, embrace it and go do it. Be in the moment when you're there, and just really understand that our world, but even our country, just has so much to offer if we just go out there and explore it.
I love it. So we talked about the movie, the 1980s movie, the Cannonball
Yeah,
Run. I'm pretty sure they made a Cannonball Run too. I can't remember
I
if they
did, but
did.
I think it was pretty bad.
I think it was too, and I don't
Yeah,
remember if
yeah.
there was a 3 or a 4, but whatever number they're at, you're going to be the star of the next Cannonball Run movie. Hollywood's going to make a movie about you and your life, whether
I
it
don't know about
includes
that,
this
but
trip.
yeah.
Oh, it's happening. It's on. Maybe it's a coaching movie. I don't know, but they're going to
Yeah.
make a movie about you, and I want to know when they do, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you.
Yeah, so I actually get stopped quite a bit. Michael Lennington and I were actually doing a speaking engagement in Georgia, and I even got approached in the hotel, and people ask if I'm the guy who plays Rip on Yellowstone.
Nice.
So, so I think his name is Cole Hauser. So
Yeah,
I guess
he's
that's
from
the
Dazed
guy.
and Confused.
Yeah, I know. That's where he got his. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
love it.
that's people say, "Hey, are you Rip from Yellowstone?" And
Cole
you know,
Hauser, baby.
Cole
Okay.
Hauser. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. What's your movie going to be called?
I think Roots and Wheels.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
Roots and Wheels starring Cole Hauser. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch that movie for sure.
Uh-huh.
And Mike, 12-week year training, RE Solutions, all the other things that you got, Line Life Pro. How can people find you?
Yeah, I would love to tell you that you could find me on social media, but I'm making a very concerted effort to not be on social media right now. So, I'm just really want to stay connected. But there's resolutions.realtor is our website. My email address is mike@resolutions.realtor. That's always probably the best way to reach me. And whatever you want to talk about. If you, I'm talking to some people about helping them understand how to do Italy. And the best ways to go about that, and what we've learned about from our trips to Italy, and or if you want to learn about doing a road trip across the country, however I can help people.
Nice. Well, Mike, just want to publicly thank you for being such an awesome friend, mentor. You've helped me in so many ways. You've connected me with so many people, and I am so sincerely grateful for everything. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope that Mike's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell, or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. And we'd also appreciate it if you could tag us on social media or leave us a review. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you for listening. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Scott.